Hello, in this video we are going to see the Checkout Branding API. This is one of the APIs Shopify has made available to us as part of their transition to Checkout Extensibility, and with it we will be able to visually customize some parts of the checkout experience in a Shopify store. And just to set your expectations right away, not every single property is customizable, and through this API you don't end up having as much control as if you were directly adding CSS yourself. But nonetheless, as you can see in this demo Shopify provides over here, you can still make some significant customizations that can help make the checkout experience feel right at home with the rest of your store's UI. Before getting started, note that this is a Shopify Plus feature at the time of recording this video. So if your store is not on that plan, unfortunately, what we'll do here won't work, with the exception of development stores. Also, it's important to mention that the customizations we'll do here will apply across the whole checkout flow, checkout UI extensions, and the customer account pages. At the moment, we are not able to style individually any of these pages, so the changes will propagate to all of them at the same time. And with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Now let me show you first how to create a development store that has this feature enabled. If you're working on this on a production store, you don't need to follow this step. Just make sure you have Checkout Extensibility enabled. If you need to migrate to Checkout Extensibility, I'll leave a link in the video description with a guide on how to do that. Now, to create a development store that has this feature enabled, here I'm going to select Create a Store to test and build. And here under Developer Preview, I'm going to select Checkout and Customer Accounts Extensibility. With this, we have Checkout Extensibility enabled for this store. Now, I already have created my store, but if you haven't, you can select here Start with Test Data, give your store a name, and start following this tutorial on this development store. Now, from within the Shopify store, I'll click here on Settings, and from here I'll go to Checkout. These things right here are called profiles, and they behave similarly to Shopify themes. There's a live one, but you can duplicate it multiple times by clicking here to have draft profiles, each one connected to your checkout, but with the advantage that you can test customizations there without affecting what your customers will see. And then once you're ready to make those changes go live, you can make a draft profile be the live one. We'll see how to do that by duplicating this one first, and let's go here to preview it. This is a draft profile. As you can see here, you are previewing copy of default profile, and if we make any customization here, it will not affect what the customer will see live. Now here, let's click on Customize, and by clicking here on Settings, we have already a few settings we can customize here. These use the Checkout Branding API behind the scenes, but Shopify exposes these to us because these are some of the most common settings a merchant will want to customize. For example, it's normal they might want to add a logo to their checkout, set a different background color for this section over here or this section over here, change the font for the headings or for the body, and so on. So let's play with a few of these. Let's, for example, set the background color to this light green over here for this section, and then for this other section, let's set it to a darker green, such as this one. And if I save this over here and I refresh this page, I see my changes here. But if I go back and click on the one that is live and view it, none of those changes have propagated here yet. Now, if you can already customize the checkout through this menu, why would you want to use the Checkout Branding API? Well, if you scroll here to the bottom, you can see that for more advanced customizations, we have to use the Checkout Branding API, as pointed out by Shopify right here. For example, if we wanted to use a different font than the ones listed over here, for example, let's say our store is using a custom font that's not in this list, we can do so by using the Checkout Branding API. As over there, we are able to select a custom font, even if it's not listed here. Also, if we wanted to change the border radius of these form controls or change their padding, like for example, let's say that this button has a lot of padding and we wanted to reduce it, we can do so through the Checkout Branding API as well. Another good example is the Favicon over here. You can see that there is no favicon for my checkout, but if I click here, my store does have one. So to make it appear over here, I have to do so through the Checkout Branding API. So let's see how we can interact with it. To interact with the Checkout Branding API, we are going to install the GraphiQL app in our store. You could also do the same by querying the Admin API using your app's credentials in case you are developing an app and if said app has the Read Checkout Branding settings and Write Checkout Branding settings access scopes, but I find this method to be simpler as no new app needs to be created. In this page over here, which I'll leave in the video description, you will click on Install the Shopify GraphiQL app, and this will open this link over here. Here you have to paste your store's URL, which I'll grab from here. Basically all of this. You can copy this and paste it here. And from here I'm going to clear this selection and only select the scopes that I need, which are Checkout Branding Settings, Read and Write, and I also need Read and Write for files, as you will see later in the video. And I'm also going to clear this selection over here. You can select more scopes if you need to, but with these 4 is enough for what we'll cover in this tutorial. So I'll click here on Install. And after a moment, we are going to see here the GraphiQL editor. Here we have it. If I run this query, here we can see Checkout Branding 2024, the name for this store. There are 2 important concepts we have to understand first ahead of interacting with the API. These are design systems and customizations. Design systems set the design language for the entire checkout, so all of the different elements and apps that depend on it read from them. For example, the color schemes and typography of the checkout are set in there. And complementary to this, we have customizations, which consumes the values set in design systems to change the UI accordingly. To give a more concrete example, when changing the typography, we have 2 values, the primary typography and the secondary typography, and then the different elements in the page can choose to use whether the primary one or the secondary one. If the primary typography is Times New Roman and the secondary typography is Arial, that's something we set in design systems. Then which UI component is using which is something we'll set from customizations. So if the buttons were to use primary typography and the headings secondary typography, that's a customization change. That way, if in the future you want to change the primary font from Times New Roman to Roboto, you just have to change it once, and then that change will cascade through the UI seamlessly without you needing to update each component one by one. Now let's start by changing the font of the headings, such as this one and this one. So what I'm going to do is delete this query over here, and the first thing we need to do is get the checkout profile ID. So for this, I'm going to do a query, and I'm going to say checkout profiles. I'm going to get the first 10 edges, node, and from here I'm going to get the ID and the name. Here I get default profile and copy of default profile. This is the one that is not published, so this is the one that we'll use. But if you're not sure, you can also get here the is published property. And as you can see, this one is not published, so this is the right one to use for testing. So I'm going to grab this ID over here, and I'm going to paste it here and comment it for now, and I'm also going to comment this query. This ID, by the way, can also be grabbed from over here. This number right here is the same number we have here at the end, and this part is always the same. So if you know how to construct this, you can skip this checkout profiles query step. Next, we are going to create a mutation here. This receives 2 parameters, checkout branding input, which is of type checkout branding input and is required, and then we have checkout profile ID, which is of type ID and is also required. Then here we are going to call checkout branding observed and pass checkout branding input. Let's see, it should be in lowercase all. And I'm also going to pass it checkout profile ID and pass this variable over here. From here, I'm going to query checkout branding design system, typography, and here we're going to get primary note secondary, because the font that controls the headings is the secondary one by default, so we're going to get secondary, and from here we are going to get the name. Let's see what else we can do. I think that's enough for now. So now the variables here, we're going to pass checkout profile ID. I'm going to paste this over here, and then checkout branding input, design system, typography, secondary, Shopify font group. We're going to start by setting a Shopify font, and from here we can pass the name. Where do we get the names? By going to the Shopify fonts page, which I'll leave in the video description. You can get the name by copying this. So I'm going to copy this over here and go to my query and paste this here. Now if I run this, we get that the name of the secondary font got updated here. So if I refresh this page, we see that this font and this font changed accordingly. But that customization can also be done through here, as you can see. But what cannot be done through here is changing the font size for the heading. So let's do just that. Here, I'm going to now pass customizations, and from here I'm going to select heading level 2, typography, and from here I'm going to select size. And here we have some predefined sizes. Let's set it to extra large, so it is evident that we are changing the size. If I run this and now refresh this page, these headings look larger. If we set it to extra large, it occupies even more space, and we can change it back to its original value by setting this to null. If we do so, we reset its value to what it had initially. We can also, through this API, customize what font each of the different elements are using. For example, let's say that I want to customize what font the primary button is using. So from here I'll select typography, and here font. By default it is using primary as most other elements in the checkout except for the heading, but let's say that we want to change it to secondary. So right now this looks like this, and it is using this font. It covers this button as well. But after running this query and refreshing this page, both this button and this button got their font updated to match the one being used in the heading. And talking about buttons, we can also customize a few other properties. For example, we can change the background, but you cannot pick any arbitrary color. You only can pick whether you want to use solid color or none. By default, it is using a solid color, and it is getting that from the color scheme defined in design systems. We'll see that later. Or you can choose none. Let's choose none, and if I save this, you'll see here that now we only get text for this button. But we can also, now that there is no background, we can use border, and here we can use full. And now we have one of these buttons that have a transparent background but an outline to let the user know that all of this area is clickable. We can also change the border, the corner radius. Let's set it to none. And you can see here how this changes. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is not as flexible as CSS, but from here we have much more control than what we have in this menu over here. Another interesting combination we have is for form controls. Right now they are looking like this, but if we start here by looking for control here, we can change the color to be transparent. We can change the corner radius to be none. And then if we select text field and border, we can select block end. And by running this, we are going to get this result where only the lower border is visible and the other ones are transparent, as well as the background. There are some stores that use this design language for their other input fields throughout the store, so if you want to customize it to look this way, that's how you do it. Now you can notice here that the select field still has all of its borders, and that's because we have to, from here, also query select and set its border to block and do. By refreshing this, we get it to look like the other fields. Now let's see how we can use custom fonts in Checkout. For this, I'm going to go here on Content, open this in a new tab, and here I'm going to select Files. From here you have to upload your font files by clicking here, and they should be in WOV or WOV2, although if you can, use WOV2 as the compression for that format is better. Also, you need to have licenses for the fonts you're going to use, so keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go back to the query here, and we are going to query the font file to get its ID. From here, the query we are going to run is files. We're going to get the first one, and we are going to pass the query parameter here. The file name will be, let's see, permanent marker regular.wov2. So permanent marker regular.wov2, that's the name of the file containing my font. You will have to put here the name of your file containing your font. Now from here, I'm going to get edges, node, and then I'm going to put here a fragment on generic file. I'm going to get the ID, and this is the ID that will have to pass to the Checkout Branding API in a moment, so I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. What we are going to do is here in this query, for the input, we are going to change this Shopify font group to use a custom font group instead. And from here, we're going to specify base. The generic file ID is this ID we got, so I'm going to copy this and paste it here. The weight is 400. And we also have to do the same for bold. However, this font doesn't have a bold variant, so I'm going to pass it the same parameters over here, as I still have to pass this one because it is required. Let's see, I was getting this error because of this. And for the loading strategy, I'm going to select swap. I'm going to run this, and let's see, we get the name of the font, which is this hash over here we got, and let's see how this looks like. And just for reference, this is permanent marker, the font that I use, which I got from Google Fonts, and if I refresh this page, we can see it over here, over here, over here, and over here, as these are all of the places where I was using the secondary font, which is the one I just updated in this query right here. Also, in case you are only previewing this through the editor, custom fonts don't update there. So if I refresh this page in the editor, you're going to see that I don't have the custom font I set a moment ago here, and it says default, but if I preview, my font is still there. So I'm mentioning this in case you are facing this issue and you are confused on why it is not showing over here. Another thing you might want to customize is the favicon for the checkout. As you see over here, we don't have a favicon, even though the store itself does have one. So to customize this, we are going to need to run another query, But beforehand, we have to go here to content files once again and have our Favicon uploaded here in PNG format. It doesn't support ICO at the moment, it just supports PNG, so keep that in mind. Now from here, let's run a query to get the ID for this file. The only thing we need to do is replace this name over here with the name of my file, which is storefavicon.png. So I'm going to put this right here, and over here replace this generic file with media image. I had a typo here, and here we have the ID. Note that this is a media image ID instead of a generic file ID as we had a moment ago. So I'm going to copy this ID and paste it over here. Now I'm going to collapse this over here, and in customizations I'll look for Favicon. You can see here that it must be a PNG, so as I said earlier in the video, your Favicon must be in PNG. That might change in the future, but for now that's the only file format supported. So here, media image ID, that's the type of ID we have here. So I'm going to put this here, and that's the only property we need. Let's run this query. And if I refresh this page here, you can see that I get a Favicon now. It got updated to the one that I specified, which is this image, which matches the one that I have in my store. Same image. Finally, let's see colors. We have available brand, accent, decorative, critical, warning, success, and info, with a brief description here of what each one of them do. Depending on the context, Shopify will show the appropriate one to the user. For example, if they are trying to enter an invalid credit card, Shopify will give critical color to that error message. Likewise, if they are just seeing an info message, Shopify will use the info color for that. Unfortunately, I cannot show you how each one of them look like because, for example, in this test checkout, I cannot show an info message. However, I can force a few ones, for example, the error message. If I try to enter an invalid discount code here and click on apply, this is the error message that uses critical. So let's try to customize the critical color through the query, and the process will be exactly the same for all the other ones. Now let's update this input so we can update the global colors from here. So I'm going to select here global and critical, and from here I'm going to change the color to be blue. So this is the hexadecimal value for blue, and if I run this, let's go to my checkout here, and if I refresh, let's try to enter something invalid here again, and we get this in blue now. And customizing all the other ones is roughly the same idea. Now, critical wasn't already customizable through this settings menu for checkout. As you can see here, I got updated to be blue. This also reinforces the idea that this is using behind the scenes the Checkout Branding API, as I modified that color from my query over here. I modified it from here, and it got updated also here. But as you can see, we only can update 3 colors here, while in the documentation we have 7. So if you wanted to update warning, which I believe is not available through here, you will have to do so through a query, as we saw just a moment ago. Now we also have the color schemes in case we need more granular control on how certain elements look in the page. We have these 4 groups: base, control, primary button, and secondary button. Base is for regular text in the page, surface backgrounds, links, and such. Control is for 4 controls, and primary and secondary buttons are self-descriptive. Each one of these groups have background, border, icon, text, accent, and decorative colors, which we can override, and then Shopify can derive other colors from them, such as a subdued variant or a darker one. Also, we have here schemes. Scheme 1 and Scheme 2 are the ones that are available right now, and by default these are used. Scheme 1 for the primary surface, such as the main area of the checkout, and then Scheme 2 is used for the secondary surface, such as the order summary of checkout. But as noted here, in the future we will be able to apply color schemes to more surfaces. By using color schemes to its fullest, you can achieve results such as this, where the colors play well together and make it look in check with the brand. There are things customized here which we can't do from the editor Shopify provides, such as the text color, for example, which here is in this dark green, but in Shopify by default it is black, and if we were not interacting with this API directly, we wouldn't be able to change it. Over here you can check that there is no setting for changing the text color. So this is one of the advantages of interacting with the Checkout Branding API directly. So let's change the text color. Here we'll do schemes, and for scheme 1, let's look for base, and here text, let's make it be red. So if I run this query and refresh this page here, all of this text from this side should be red. Remember, this text is not affected because this side uses scheme 2. Now let's also change the color of the button. We can do this from here, primary button. We can say that the background would be, let's make it red too, and we can also say that on hover the background will be blue. So let's run this, and if I refresh this page, the color here of the background, which in this case is just the border, is red, but if I hover it is blue. Now the text can change to white. I think it should be black, so we can fix that here. Text, let's say that it is black, and on hover it should also stay black. So if I now refresh this page, we have it here as we just said. Now, of course, there is much more you can do with this. You can continue playing with the values here to achieve the result you want, but I just showed you how you can start customizing it. And lastly, if you want to undo the customizations you made to your checkout, what you can do is over here, design system, delete all of this and set its value to null. And for customizations, we're going to delete all of this and set its value to null. By running this query as it is, we're going to undo everything that was down here. So let's do just that. And if I refresh the page, we are back to how we were right at the beginning of the video. And there you have it. That's how you use the Checkout Branding API. As you've seen throughout this video, GraphiQL did a lot of the heavy lifting thanks to its auto-completion and the built-in documentation right in the editor. We didn't cover every single property available, but I hope that with what we saw here, you have the base knowledge and tools to customize the checkout as you want, as long as it's a customization supported by Shopify, of course. If you found this video useful, remember to like and subscribe for more Shopify-related content, and I'll see you all in the next video.